Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Venture Outfitter. This is Kevin Koym and our community. We are going live. And for those of you all that are used to us waiting just a few more minutes before everything happens, we're going to start fixing that. We're going to start at 11 more often. Welcome to the Venture Outfitter. Iron sharpening iron. We'll tell you what that means in just a second. But Venture Outfitters here. This weekly program is part of what our community uses to plug in with each other. And we're going to be doing a lot more activity around this. In fact, for some of you that you've been coming to the office hours, we're going to start leveraging more of that content during this time. Just because I think that there's been a strong desire about it. People are saying on a weekly basis, hey, should I plug in here? Should I plug in there? Well, we're going to do more activities here to support that, especially given that this is a time that both America's-based and European and African-based organizations can plug in all the way to some of our Central Asians. Tell you what, thank you to Linda Blackman at DuoWorks for sponsoring our studio here at 183 Mopac, right in the middle of Austin. If you're looking for co-working, they have a really great offering in that they're based right in the center of Austin, really close to equidistance to places like IBM and Dell and Oracle and Apple, and then downtown and different things like that. But the most important for those of you all that are international is they can take care of special requests, like you need to adjust a mailbox, things like that. Let us know if you have questions. You can look at techranch.com/DuoWorks for more information. But if you're looking for something beyond that, just let us know and we can tell you more about what's there. And if you're not involved in the TechRanch community site, please do join. You can go to techranch.com/connect, and there is a free place to sign up on the community. Please do join us. We are going to start having several different pay areas that are going to be emerging and stuff like that. But right now, the main thing that we're trying to do is get as many people that want to be in the free community area to take advantage of the resources that are there. So please do. The coming soon, we're going to do some, actually, you're going to hear some pieces about the North American supply chain, what's happening between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. We're going to talk a little bit about that, I'm sure, in the conversation that's happening today, as well as Christia Hoffman, who is really active in the community. She had to put her date on hold because of family need that's happening, but she's going to be talking about creativity coming soon. We're just about to map out the next 12 weeks of programming. If there's anything specific you'd like to see, please let us know. There's going to be a lot of content that's going to be coming out of some of the themes that you'll hear between myself and Randall Baker, who's going to be speaking today. So part of what we'll do, though, is I want to talk a little bit about kind of the concepts that are behind the scenes about what I mean by this whole iron sharpening iron. There are 4 types of mentorship that I think are important for us as entrepreneurs to be cultivating in our lives. And today you're going to hear a little bit about me talking with one of my mentors. And I'm going to talk about the 4 types of mentors to frame this in. If you have not found the 4 types of mentors that you're looking for, one of the best uses of the community right now, well, at the end of this, is to reach out in the request channel and actually say, hey, I'm looking for the following type of mentor, and make sure that you have all 4 covered in what you're doing. And I'm going to give you examples about what each one of the 4 are. The first is what I call a general mentor. There are general mentors can cover business and personal type of things. They're there to challenge you. They really are there to shape your outlook. How are you thinking about different things? Sometimes they could be a coach. And then I think one of the most important things that I don't see in a lot of other mentorship programs is that you really want to have some type of long-term relationship. Well, and so let me give you an example. In the 2 pictures that I have here, one of my mentors is a woman who is a really famous CEO in Austin named Holly Tukowski. She is also one of the instructors around TechRanch. She's been involved in TechRanch for more than a decade. And a lot of times when I'm actually working through different issues, and it's included everything from relationship issues, I've asked her for insight about what she thinks I should be doing about my relationship with my girlfriend, to more in-depth type of activities around the business and how to cultivate different things around the business. The second photo is of Ari Messel, who we'll hear from in the coming weeks. Ari is my coach, and he's been my coach for about a year now. And I studied his material one-on-one. Actually, I studied his material as a student for about 3 years before that. So, I've been paying attention to, he has a program called The Replaceable Founder. And so I consider him, my coach and also my mentor. Both Holly and Ari actually helped me gain insight in certain areas. I don't see them a whole lot. With Ari, I interact with him on a weekly basis through a tool called Voxer. But the truth is that, they're there to really shape outlook. A second type of mentor is what I call an aspirational mentor. Someone could be living or dead. Doesn't really matter. You're just kind of following their lead or insight. And what I mean by that is, you look to that person for insight about how they shape their lives, how they did, or they, maybe did in the past. I've got a picture of Steve Jobs here. Now, many of you know that from the years 1989 through 93, I worked at a Steve Jobs startup called Next. And yeah, I did get to interact with Steve several times. He wasn't one of my general mentors. He was like, even though there was only a few hundred people in the company when I was there, so it was a very small company when it comes right down to it compared to Apple. I didn't have daily interaction with him or anything like that. I didn't have like a true mentor relationship that was agreed to. But part of what I learned from him, and you'll see as an example, like a lot of times I will talk about things about being from the house of Jobs versus the house of Gates. Right. There's certain things that I admire about what Steve did, both in his personal life and how it shaped his career and some of the fundamental decisions that he made. And I like to think of myself almost like a student of, I've been a long-term martial arts student, but I consider myself to be a student of kind of the way he thought. A good example is Steve never questioned doing the cathartic rewrite of some tool or whatever. It's like one of the things when he started the Apple II and then he started the Macintosh, there was no question about the Macintosh. The Macintosh was a whole new thing, and some of the things that used to work at on Apple II didn't work on the Mac, and that was by design. He didn't want the legacy to get in the way of the future. But, and you can just ask these questions about what would he do? Like, the little bracelets that say, what would this person do or whatever. It's just, and, we never will truly be able to encapsulate what someone living or dead did. But it's a good to have an aspirational mental model of a mentor like I have with regards to Steve and several other people, but like I'd like to think of MLK, Viktor Frankl, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. There's several different people that I really think about a lot in that context. Steve happens to be one of the ones that I feel the most shaped by because I got to have some real interaction between me and him. The third is the domain-specific mentor. And the gentleman that you see here, his name is Dr. John Biello. He happens to be an expert in certain technical areas. I started an organization inside of the Texas Global Health Security Initiative called the Mental Health Special Interest Group. And John happens to be one of the world's researchers he's actually responsible for some psychiatric drugs and different things. Like he knows a lot about the mental health area in a depth that I, as a common person, don't know. And so with regards to John is someone that I reached out to for two different things. For insight when we're actually looking at in the mental health initiatives for specific knowledge in that area where I can talk to someone who studied the subject for more than 40 years. And then on the other side, if there's an SBIR that stands for Small Business innovative research grant opportunity. John has a lot of experience with those type of grants as well. And so there's no way that I'd actually be able to like quickly develop anywhere near of his expertise in those two domains, SBIR grants or mental health technologies. And so I call this a domain specific mentor. We have irregular meetings. Sometimes I'll just send them a text. Sometimes I'll actually call them up. Sometimes we schedule meetings. I think that with your domain specific mentors, though, the relationship's important. And this is a little bit different than some of the other types. Like I know that there are mentor programs that you can see that, you just sign up for the mentor hour and someone gives you some advice and stuff like that. I think the problem with that, and I want to make sure I say this about all the different types of mentors. The problem with that is that's not true mentorship. That's, that might be a little bit of insight. That might be a little bit of advice. But true mentorship, the person needs to have some insight into where you're going, especially if you're asking in-depth conversations, in-depth, strategy shaping interactions. And with John, I have that. I met John through the Texas Global Health Security Initiative. He was one of the other founding members along with TechRanch and the University of Texas. And I just really respect his background. And we don't have a lot of different interactions, but when we do, the depth of them really helps set strategy in specific domain areas, whether it's SBIR grants or something like, when we're looking at certain mental health technologies that we might help drive investment for and things like that. So that's a domain specific mentor. Then the fourth type and I consider this a mentor type of interaction. It's what I call a running buddy. And what is a running buddy? Well, it seems like it's maybe a little bit of inappropriate to actually call running buddy as like a drinking buddy, because some of you might not drink. But the thing about it is someone that you can have fun with, have insights, blow off steam with, talk about the future, long-term type of interactions. And I think the relationship is really, really, really critical. Not just someone you run into, you have a few drinks with, and then they hop off. But it was kind of funny as I was thinking about today's topic, about what we're going to talk about, iron sharpening iron, and a conversation that's going to happen. I looked back, I'm like, how long have I known Randall Baker, Randy Baker? How long have I known him? I've known him since April 26, 2010. Probably even before that, but I know because I have a message where here is his name badge from April 26, 2010, where I was like, oh, okay, I really want to get to know this guy. And so I took a picture of his name badge. And then, in the subsequent, I guess it's now been 13 years or something like that. Since, here we are, April 13th, 2023. It's and that was April 26, 2010. It's interesting to kind of really have those type of interactions. And part of what I want to challenge you to do is, I think it's really important as entrepreneurs that the running buddies for this type of mentorship, you can have all sorts of different friends, but running buddies, if you're really cultivating this type of relationship, they need to be other entrepreneurs. This is really critical. I have another friend, is a very dear friend, all the way back from 1988 in college. And he works at IBM, and he's been there for, I don't know how many decades now. And he's a very, very close friend, but I don't consider him one of my mentor running buddies. And not to take anything away from this very dear friend that, like I got to interact with, play with in college, all the way back to, to the present day. The thing that's different about this, as you think about cultivating the four different types of mentorship, is the relationship needs to be there. But also, very importantly, is a person that is another entrepreneur that can understand the problems and difficulties of being an entrepreneur is different than the person than your friends that have had very secure jobs at large organizations. Like I'm, not to give my friend at IBM a hard time. It's like, I really appreciate his insight and the warmth of friendship. There's a little bit different thing, though, that I'm wanting to challenge you as an entrepreneur to cultivate in the four different types of entrepreneurship, four different types of mentorship. that you cultivate these running buddies. Because as I was thinking about this idea of starting today's conversation, I was like, what would be fun for me? Also be a good update, and then be interactive and create value for everybody's to see this kind of relationship play out in real time. And so that's what brings us to today, about this idea about iron sharpening iron. And, the idea of having running buddies around you that you have conversations with, and those conversations actually produce this type of result. Now, today is not about just Randall, or I call him Randy, giving me a hard time. It's not just about that. Yeah, you actually say that it is. But the thing about it is, part of what I enjoy about him, and Jello, go ahead and bring him on the screen, is that a lot of times we'll have these conversations where we'll take point, counterpoint. We'll sometimes argue about different things. Even if we don't hold a certain position, we'll argue it out just because it's kind of fun to give each other a hard time. But more importantly, from the standpoint of what I'm wanting to point to in cultivating this type of mentorship, is to actually point in to, you should cultivate these type of relationships. And if you don't have them, you're selling yourself short. So with that, hey, Randy, how are you?
Tired after that.
Yeah, well, I should have warned you that I was gonna. I wanted to, part of what we're doing more with the Venture Outfitter Weeklies is there's these concepts that I realized that in 20 years of doing this type of work, or June will be 20 years, that I'm wanting to get more of them out there so we can package them up and actually have other people really start to take advantage of what, like as an example, you and I've gotten to do back and forth. And here's to sitting back and having a bunch of tequila together and actually learning from each other. So thank you for joining today.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. It's probably a little 45 minutes or so early for me on the tequila part, but
well, you must be in Texas right now. So tell us a little bit about your background first off, for other people that don't know what you're working on, what your venture is, stuff like that, and a little bit of your background.
So, well, I started in the game of business when I was 13. It's all I've ever done all my life. I love it. I think all aspects of running, operating, and building businesses are fascinating. Presently, I'm running the operations for a software company based here in Austin, focused in solving some of the issues within the healthcare space. I've truly enjoyed the company and building the company. I cannot say the same about healthcare. It's one of those industries that if we could just blow it up, we could probably improve it. But this is my, I guess probably my 5th or 6th company. I've been an entrepreneur now since 2000. Prior to that, I had a 20-year corporate career. And prior to that, I sold Bibles and candy bars. But longtime Austinite. Find it interesting times in Austin right now. I think it's a little challenging for us as a community as we grow from being a sleepy little drinking town into a full-fledged city. We're definitely feeling the pains of that, and both the growth and the losses. I said to you earlier that I'm spending some time now kind of thinking a lot about how prepared we are for this economic turn of events. All business cycles go up and down. We happen to be in a down cycle right now, but in Austin, we seem to be very vulnerable because a lot of our growth over the last 15 years, especially in the tech side, you always have to separate Austin from the government and the university because those are different animals. But on the business side, tech has become a huge part of the city. And, we really, an entire generation of people are probably unprepared for this. Those of us that have been
You're
around a
saying
while
they're
have seen it.
unprepared for the downturn that seems to be happening, right? The number of
Yeah,
layoffs.
we seem to have forgotten the empty buildings and the see-throughs and the stuff that's happened previously to us, right? And one of the big risks of Austin has always been in the tech side is that we've had very few companies that are actually based in Austin. So their loyalty to Austin is not nearly as high. So they're much more willing to say, hey, I'll bail on, this entire building or this entire, effort or change. We've been fortunate with some of the companies like Apple that have put in, big, huge stakes in the community. Much harder for them to wax and wane. But anyhow, I think, it's interesting. We're going to go through some challenging times, investing's off, startup investing's off. Growth in the tech industry has stopped and is on a pause. It's going to continue again, but, like all business cycles, it's probably good that we have some challenging times. The question for Austin will be is from a leadership standpoint, are we ready this time? The last time that this happened to us in 2000, we brought in some incredibly great leaders, and there were some incredible civic entrepreneurs that stepped up and led us through that, right? Are we ready this time for them? And I don't know. Probably the person that I should sit down and ask would be Tom Singer, now that he's taken on the ATC job. But you were there when you were just starting out techranch. I think that was probably around 2004 or so.
Yeah, no, exactly. We 2003.
You were in the industrial buildings over there off of Burnett, which probably don't even exist anymore. There's probably some condos there, but
it's interesting because the two different times that things really seem like they did take big jumps forward, but that after the bubble burst around 2001, right, there was the figuring things out again. 2008, 2009, right, the engineers had been laid off in 2008 and 2009, and engineers are never used to being laid off. Right. They're like, I'm an engineer, what do you mean you're laying me off? Right. And that was really, I think, I remember the fear that was in, because I give a lot of public speeches, and I remember standing in front of a group of mainly engineers, like more than 40 people in the room in Cedar Park, and they were like, wait, what's happening, and all that sort of stuff. It's quite interesting that, it was a really painful time for.
Yeah, but now you're talking, and we came through the 2007-8 downturn in America relatively unscathed as a community, right? We continued to at least tread, if not grow a little. But we're talking, since the big hit in 2001, where we went from 37 fabs down to 3. We obliterated 70,000 tech jobs in a 3-4 year period. That's been nearly 20 years ago. So this generation of people in Austin in the tech community haven't experienced that, right? And a lot of the guiding leaders that we had that got us through the 80s and 90s and helped build all that are no longer with us. So, are we prepared for that? Are we ready for that? And, are we thinking about how we're going to adapt to that, right? Now, with that always comes opportunity, right? Those challenges present opportunities, but I don't know. I haven't been playing in that civically for a while, although I seem to be over the last 6 months getting drawn back into that unwillingly. But sometimes people just grab your ass by the feet and drag you out.
Where are you getting plugged into? Just to give us a.
I've been getting invited to a lot of economic development meetings, and bringing up, mental issues from my past of living through 2004 to 2010. So, it's interesting. I mean, our problems now are much different. Unfortunately, they don't seem to be the problems that the city leadership's addressing, but the business community sees it. The problems now are different. Will people come back to the additional, 12, 14 million square feet of office space we built? Are people going to occupy it? Or are we just going to have a bunch of see-through buildings? And if so, what are we going to do with them? Who's going to pick up the slack? That's a huge weight. All that growth that has occurred in East Austin that, we talk about underserved areas like East Austin, but if you've been over there anytime in the last 5 years, it doesn't look very underserved. If anything, looks very overserved. I was down on 4th Street a few weekends ago for a Sunday morning brunch, and it's unrecognizable. It's 3 miles of nothing but retail on the bottom and 4-story apartments above, and miles of it. None of that existed 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And that's very exciting, but it's also a big challenge. We can't rest on what we've had. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are using up space around Austin are not using it now. So we've got to figure those problems out. We've got to figure out a path forward. Our path in the early 2000s was real straightforward. It was. We got on a plane. We went out to Silicon Valley. We walked into every VC office there was on Sand Hill. And we said, so look, how'd you like your investments to go 25% further? We can show you how to do that. Right? That was an easy pitch, right? You got, if you walk into, Khosla or someone, and they are going to put in $100 million in a company, and you can tell them how to make $25 million more dollars out of that 100 million, they're interested. We don't have that anymore. We're no longer competitive there. We're no longer the cheap guys on the street. We're no longer the inexpensive place with high talent. Right?
What do you think the theme is that we should tie into these days then?
I don't know. It's what I've been giving a lot of thought to. That's what I've been getting drawn into is so what's going to be our pitch? We got a cool vibe. We used to be the live music capital. Those are just not strong pitches. So we're going to have to figure out, what are we going to say to the world? We had a really easy pitch in the mid 2000s. It was easy. We were cheap and we were eclectic. We were different. We were at that time, keep Austin weird, or the moniker didn't really matter. The point was, and I always look to, Bejoy to give me the idea of whatever our moniker should be, because Lord knows nobody's thought about it more than he has. But now what are we going to pitch? That, we have SUP meetups on Town Lake. We've got to figure out what are we going to do during those difficult times. And we've always looked to ourselves, and it's always worked for us. And hopefully this time we'll have a new set of leaders that will be ready for that and are thinking about it now. That's what I'm hoping. If not, then, we're going to have a little rough patch. It's not that it won't stop. It's never stopped. But, again, cycles.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well,
and then while I'm thinking about that, as we talked about when we first jumped on today, I'm thinking about Mexico, man.
Yeah, let's talk about Mexico.
There's a shitload of Mexicans down there, and I like them.
But yeah, so for context for people that are listening that don't necessarily know either one of our contexts. In my case, my first experience of doing business in Mexico was in '91. And then my first experience of having my first client for my first startup was in '94 in Guadalajara, Mexico. And Randy, what you actually spend part of your time in Texas and part of your time in Guanajuato?
Yeah, this year, if it works out well, I'm going to balance my life into half my life in Mexico and half my life up here. I call that the fun side of the wall. When I'm down there, I'm in the fun side of the wall. We made the decision couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, to look for buying a place in Mexico. The town we had settled on, just out of just pure love, was a little place in central Mexico called Guanajuato. It's the capital city of the state of Guanajuato. Beautiful place, incredible culture, incredible history. I read about 2 books a month on Mexico, and I'm about 10 down. The culture still boggles my mind. But there's this incredible culture, not just the 550 years of Spanish history, but prior to that. It's an incredible country. It's youthful. It's starting to get a middle class, and that's fascinating, to watch a country evolve to that. There's just, everywhere I go in Mexico, all I see is business opportunity, right? I'm an opportunist, right? There's the optimist and the pessimist, and glass half full, glass half empty. I'm the opportunist. I'm just going to drink the damn thing. I'm just looking for opportunity. And Mexico has tremendous opportunity. There are challenges. There are some big obstacles we have to overcome. I think the Tesla announcement of the Gigafactory in Monterrey was huge, on an international basis, because it's probably one of the biggest cross-border announcements in the last 10, 15 years. It's a natural fit, right? Mexico's got a huge, long history of automobile construction, manufacturing, building, huge. I think
Yeah, well,
Ford built the
I
second
noticed
factory
that,
in the world was built in Mexico. Ford's in the 30s. So huge business opportunity.
a lot of people don't have that perspective. They don't realize how many cars get built out of in Mexico across. There's several different states in Mexico, and the 32 states in Mexico. There's at least 5 of them that are really, really heavy in manufacturing.
And one of them happens to be where I live.
Yeah, exactly.
As I leave the town of Guanajuato, I pass the General Motors factory, and I see the trainloads of Silverado trucks heading north. And just a few miles down in Celaya is the VW factory. It's huge. I think Mexico's, David, tell me if I get these numbers wrong. But I think around 42 billion in vehicle exports last year. And by the way, it's not just in North America. So the one of the huge advantages of Mexico in exportation, not just vehicles, but in exporting, is the huge cost advantage of exporting from Mexico to the EU. Tesla estimates that to export from Mexico to the US is $1,200 per car cheaper than from China to the US, and $4,300 cheaper to the EU.
Huh.
So, because Mexico astutely has cut cross-border deals with the EU. So they like NAFTA, they have agreements not just into the South America, but all the way across the ocean. And so there's great market opportunity there, right? Interesting educational system. It's very inexpensive for kids to go to college. They've got some great universities. The Monterrey Institute of Technology, to me, would compete on a level with any technological institute in the U.S., Georgia Tech, MIT. It's a great university. It's a lot different country than we've been taught. That we read about. Of course, all we read about is 4 people crossed into Matamoros to do something and got in a gunfight, right?
Where there's a lot of noise that there are things that have happened, but same thing about a lot of people are concerned about the violence in Mexico, but then you look at the United States and you're saying, hey, wait, it's like just remember that what just happened in downtown Austin or any other city in the
Yeah.
United States
Yeah,
compared.
no, well, and here's what I'd say from what I've learned over the last couple of years, in terms of hard violence, brutal violence, hanging cops from bridges, that type of thing, right? Absolutely, Mexico is a more violent country. It has a 550-year history of that type of brutality. It's not something that's new, it's built into the culture so that it's kind of normalized there. But if you take that off the table, and I'm not saying ignore it, I'm just saying set that to the side for a second. The rest of the country is it's a safe place. You don't feel threatened. I mean, there's corruption. It's not as sophisticated as it is up here, so if cop wants 200 pesos out of you, they're going to stop you and tell you to give them 200 pesos. And now you got to negotiate, right? So you have to have some skills to get around that. But, infrastructure wise, they've got a strong infrastructure. They're building it. They need more, especially in the southern part of the country. We're building more in the northern part. We're building more bridges to cross between the countries for goods. That's a problem. The crime is an issue, and you need to address that, right? And I think you're going to have to address the Laredo problem and the Matamoros problem if you want people like Tesla to go back and forth between headquarters in Austin and the Gigafactory in Monterey. They won't travel by car if it's not safe. Those things are.
I mean, one of the things that I always expect as we see all this activity that's seemingly moving away from China into Mexico, as an example, some of the people down there, I'm certain, would rather pick up a wrench to work on a car versus an AK-47 to exact some kind of violence. Like, right? It's a lot of
Absolutely.
a lot of the things that happen and all that sort of stuff. If you just give people opportunity and you focus on giving people opportunity, I think there's a natural thing that opportunity drives peace more than anything else, right?
Well, that goes into the rising middle class, right? When you get more people that are in a middle class in a country, there tends to be less tolerance of generalized crime, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the cartels have an advantage recruiting people historically. Wages are low in Mexico. Believe it or not, wages for labor, for skilled labor, automotive, construction, manufacturing labor, are on par with China. But that means they're low. They could stand to go up. AMLO is doing that. Talk about a huge increase. The minimum wage in Mexico this year went up 20%. That across the board, right? It's huge. As you get that middle class, the people that can afford to buy a car, that can afford a TV or other devices, right? They will drive the crime down because they won't tolerate it, right? You don't want crime in your neighborhood. So
right.
You tend to, and now the cartels can't hire some guy from a rural town who is unemployed and has no opportunities, because that person now has opportunities.
Right.
But that takes years. They're going to have to address that more rapidly. But outside of that, set that aside for a second and talk about the business opportunity of Mexico. And I'm not talking about building gigafactories. Those are great. Those are huge hits. Those are big wins, like Samsung and Austin, right? But that isn't what builds Austin. What we talk about at places like TechRanch is the 1,000 entrepreneurs starting 1,000 companies, right?
Yeah,
that abounds
exactly.
in Mexico. I spend a lot of time just looking at the small business guys in Mexico, and the opportunities are just huge. Lack of automation, lack of controls, lack of business knowledge, all things that US entrepreneurs could address and help. And when you see them getting addressed in Mexico, and I think over the last 10 years, watching the whole micropayment thing in Mexico evolve, it's huge. people just adapted. Remitly, Wise, any of the other ways to move money around Mexico become huge opportunities very rapidly and grow rapidly on their own and organically, right? Those opportunities in Mexico remind me of America, what you read about in America in the 40s and 50s. It's like, on the cusp, right? How do you manage a car dealership? How do you do customer service? How do you build businesses? And that just doesn't exist at that level in America right now. We've gotten beyond that, right? It's more sophisticated, but that gives us an opportunity as entrepreneurs to look towards Mexico and say, how do we do that now and then? And it has businesses challenged, but it's not unfriendly. They have corporations, they have LLCs, they have LLPs, they have all the standard business. It cost me $1,500 to create an LLC down there. It's not that hard. Paperwork, paperwork's in Spanish, but it's
I think that's one of the things that's happening in my case as well, right? I have a team member in Mexico City, a team member in Querétaro, and just about to bring a team member on from another. Well, I do not know if it's going to be Durango or Nuevo León, but so same type of thing too, right? Companies can actually take advantage of, startups can actually take advantage of the back and forth, especially after COVID, right? COVID fundamentally shifted how we think about companies and how we actually put things together.
Yeah.
What are you doing in the case of MI7? Like what does that look like? Because you're really taking on an industry that's a mess, right? Healthcare is a mess. Yeah,
it's not going to fix itself either.
Yeah, no, totally. We're going to have to break.
There's zero motivation for it to fix itself.
Exactly.
Their solution to every problem is the same. We'll just charge more. I've been playing that industry for 7 years, and for 7 years they've been talking about getting away from value-based care, and yet everything they do are going to value-based care and getting away for fee-for-service. And yet everything you do in the industry is fee-for-service still.
Yeah, well, and I think they're drunk on fee-for-service just because
But I'll give you an example of tying that into Mexico is we're working right now in Agua Calientes and in Guanajuato with the universities to pull dev people, to hire dev people in the universities there. We're starting off doing front end dev guys, but they're there, they're available, and they want to work. So there's opportunities there because STEM education is, it doesn't matter to me where the dev guy comes from. Half our dev team's in Belarus. I don't care where they are. I don't care if I speak the same language as them. It doesn't matter. There's always ways around those obstacles. The question is, can they write good code and produce, great products for our clients? I think the healthcare industry, the challenge, and this is going to be really hard during this economic period, is if you want to get into healthcare, you're in the tech side, you're going to look at digital health. And if you're going to look at digital health, your sales cycle is 2 to 3 times longer than any other industry. Very few digital health companies have had good, successful exits because of that. It's really easy to get in a sandbox. It's really easy to pick up the phone and call Ascension, or pick up the phone and call Memorial Hermann, or call UT, then get in one of their sandbox deals, and you're in the lab and you're being tested and all. But those never go anywhere. They never come out of that. They never get used and functioned where now they're paying you, your fees every month, or your price for your solution. And so that long cycle makes that industry very difficult from a funding level. And funding has dropped almost 23% in the last 2 quarters consecutively. So it's down probably 30-40% in digital health. Why? It's hard to justify your return. It's not a swing for the fence return like you get out of bio, right? I mean, bio is beautiful. You dump 100 million in and it's a roulette wheel. You're going to hit red 17 or you're toast. I mean, it's one of the two, right? I mean, it's either you're going to get a huge exit or you fry. Digital health is more of a standard tech model. And if you lengthen the sales cycle, the hardship of that tech model becomes, how am I going to get the return I need in a standard VC investment model? You know, you're looking at an investment model that starts out when the fund's created at a 10 to 12 year period, right? They've already got a couple of ideas they're going to invest in. So now they're 3 years in. And you say, well, now I'm investing in that latter part of that fund. I need a 4-year, 5-year exit. It's 4 years to get your first sale.
Yeah.
Not your 100 million a year sale runway now, where I get either an M&A event or you know, I IPO, whatever it is, my exit. And that's a challenge in healthcare. That innovative side, they spend a lot of money on their, what I call the sandbox, the labs and stuff, but not a lot of money implementing in the field. And it's very hard.
So how do we actually take advantage of, I mean, we can bring a couple other people in, given that we have David here, who's in this area too, but I'm actually two things. Well, I'll actually suggest two different things.
Yeah.
One of them is, I'm really surprised you haven't given me a hard time yet during the course of this interaction. That's the first
you
thing.
know,
Not just saying. And then
I think it's hard to pick on losers. It's just really
I miss you too. Well, the thing, what we could do is we could expand part of this to
Sure.
invite David Potus into the conversation and just put him on the spot, because one of my favorite things to do is to put David on the spot when it comes regards to his venture in the area that he's in and stuff like that.
Well, that's because he lives in Monterey, and well, not in Monterey. He lives on the wealthy side of the neighborhood. Make no mistake about it, okay? He's living in the lap of luxury.
In San Pedro, right?
Yeah.
We're close to San Pedro, yes.
Yeah, you don't get to say that you struggle on that side of the river. I mean, you literally have a Bentley dealership inside of a mall. I didn't even know that existed till I went to Monterey.
It's funny.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I mean, talking about Mexico, it's different to talk about Monterrey and different to talk about San Pedro compared to the rest of Mexico. So yeah, there's difference in different levels inside of the country. I mean, I think it's normal, but yeah, it is.
Oh yeah, well, Monterey is you know, the Santa Monica, the Hollywood of Mexico. I've never seen more private jets and hangars for private jets than I have landing in the private airport there in Monterey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there must be 200 hangars there, each with 4 or 5 jets. I don't know who owns them, but apparently there's money in countries.
Yeah, there's something here in Monterrey and San Pedro, and I mean, we have always pride ourselves as the I mean, we are pride people and proud people, and in that sense we say that we carry the country, but I mean, we're just joking about it. But yeah, talking about financially, economically, the what we give back to the country is more than the country gives back to Monterrey. So yeah, in that sense, and our governor right now is one of the governors that has this vision to take Nuevo León to another level with Tesla, and now the World Cup being, we're gonna also, like, the US gonna be part host of the World Cup. I've been telling people around here that we're gonna see a different Monterrey in 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's gonna be completely different, and in terms of infrastructure, in terms of companies coming back to Monterrey. We're trying to decentralize a lot of what usually big companies, what they do is they go and position themselves in Mexico City, and we're trying to take a little bit of that to to Monterrey specifically. But if other companies want to go to Guadalajara, want to go to other parts of the country, there's a lot of opportunities there.
Sure. The central belt of the country, you know,
yeah,
from the West Coast to the Gulf. Yeah, I agree. But Monterey is just, it's an animal on its own. You know,
Well, it's interesting
now
for
the
perspective.
I will have to tell you, you don't have the best tequila store in Mexico. That would be in Tlaquepaque, but you do have the second best.
No, we pride ourselves more on our beer.
You have a great, San Pedro has a great tequila store. I stop by every time and pick up a few bottles to take down to Guanajuato. We're in the desert. We don't get a whole lot of good tequila in Guanajuato.
Yeah, for perspective for people that are listening in, as we're talking about Monterey, a lot of people don't have any concept of where Monterey is. Monterey is 6 hours of driving time from Austin. So I've driven between Austin and Monterey, and actually find a lot of times that, except for when there's nonstops, and I think there is now a nonstop airline that goes between the two. It started and stopped, but in the past, when I have to travel from Austin to Houston to Monterey, or Austin to Dallas to Monterey, or drive from Austin to San Antonio and then take a flight from San Antonio to Monterey, it was actually faster for me just to get in the car, and I'd have more control on just driving straight there. I haven't done it in recent years, but it's that close. And so
I haven't done it in 4 weeks.
Well, say more about it, Randy and David. Go ahead.
It's awesome. I argue with people online about this shit all the time. Constantly argue with guys who say, don't drive down through Laredo to Monterey. And I'm like, you guys are nuts. The Quota 85 that goes from just south of Nuevo Laredo to Monterey is, it's a 4-lane divided interstate. It's a 2-hour drive that is nothing. I mean, it's just straight. It's just as fast as you want to go. If you can keep up with the trucks, you can go that fast. And it's an easy drive. From Austin to Monterey is with the crossing, maybe 7 hours. But it's an easy drive. It's all modern roads. It's nothing of what we had in the 1930s, which is what we're always perceiving in America of that side of the world, but it's not true. You drop right down into central Monterey. 85 goes all the way over to San Pedro. You can I'd probably pull up to David's office right off 85 there.
So the reason about that is because of the huge commercial interaction there is between Mexico and the US, specifically with Nuevo León and Texas, and it all goes through Laredo.
Yeah.
So I mean, so for us, Monterrey, we have two common entries to the US. Either we go to McAllen or to Laredo, and it's safer to go to Laredo because it's, in quote unquote, more protected because of the commercial aspect, because there's more financial interest in guarding the roadway between Monterrey and Nuevo Laredo. That is the border city. And the people who go to McAllen, to Reynosa, that's a little bit more dangerous. I mean, quote unquote. I mean, again, you hear stories. Nothing has ever happened to me, and I traveled those roads, both of them, tons of times. But like Randy said, I mean, the thing here about security and about violence is just that you have to know where to go at what time and where to be at the correct time. If you're, for example, it's really highly recommended to not travel the roads or the highways, the interstates at night. That's just basic security. They started around 2008 when the cartel war started to grow. But other than that, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's like you mentioned, 5-6 hours with a crossing. It's going to be probably another hour there, but it's really, really close. And like Randy said, we're just 2-hour drive from the border. And one of the funny things about Monterrey is that, and I remember I had a boss. I used to, before techranch, I used to work in Austin a couple of times, and my boss from Austin came to Monterrey a couple of times. I invited him here, and he was expecting, you know, the Hispanic, Spanish colonial things about Mexico. Like Randy said, you read on the books and things like that. And he said, like, when he was in San Pedro, like, I mean, it's really Americanized. It's really, really Americanized Monterrey. The rest of the Mexico makes fun of us about how Americanized we are. But that's just because we're really close to the U.S. and we have this really close relationship with Texas specifically. So
Well, I think you see it as well. I think you see that as well in some of the other cities. On, you know, like as an example, I drove from Austin to Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico, not too long ago. I mean, actually, I guess it was pre-pandemic, so July 4th of 2019, I was in Juarez, and same type of thing, right? It's like you know, you have to be careful in certain areas, but you do in the United States as well, right? You know, it's like a lot of times.
Well, and you know, I've had this. I'm a numbers guy, and I've had this arguments for going on 3 years now with groups of people that travel to Mexico and talk about the danger. You know, every now and then someone accidentally gets shot in Nuevo Laredo. And I say someone, I mean, no one's trying to shoot Americans. No one's that interested in Americans as much as you think they are. They're not, okay? But there are 7 million border crossings in Laredo per year, non-commercial. Does not count the commercial side. I'm not counting the tens of thousands of trucks that cross every day. I'm talking about non-commercial passenger vehicles and people. There are 7 million crossings a year. So, you know, statistically, you know, if 5 people got shot, that's, you know, if you're one of the 5, that sucks for you, but, and for your family and friends, but, you know, statistically, you probably have greater odds of getting shot down on 6th Street in Austin.
Yeah, yeah, no,
I mean,
I remind people all the time.
It's a numbers game, right? And yeah, there is room for improvement. I am not suggesting there isn't room for improvement.
Well, but this is one of the things that's happening. Go ahead.
If I add something really quick, here in Mexico, we always have this idea that is not always true, but it's very common, that when somebody gets shot, it's because they were involved in something fishy. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not common crime usually. I mean, there is, of course, there is, like everywhere. But for example, this one guy that just got shot in Tulum. It was a guy from Monterrey. And just because seeing the way they developed, everybody knows, I mean, they were going after him. He was involved in some cartel thing or something like that. And that's usually what happens here. The danger about that is you don't want to be caught in the crossfire, right? That's the danger about this.
Well, I think that's what happened in, I think the conclusion of the event with the 4 people from North Carolina and Matamoros was they were on the wrong street at the wrong time and got caught up in the middle of a firefight.
Yeah, it was same.
I mean, that sucks, but it wasn't as if like, you know, oh, we're going to go target Americans when they cross the border. It was more like you took a wrong left and found yourself in deep East LA and thinking, I need to get out.
Yeah, well, let's do this. Let's wrap around that, because I mean, the main thing about it is, yes, there's something there, but then again, if you look at American school children, they're up against the same kind of thing at school. Period.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you know, the main thing is, I don't want to have our conversation just be about that, because people then will be actually thinking, and I just want to remind people that, you know, you have really weird events happening on a weekly basis here in the States that just to put things in perspective. What I want to do is, since Daniel's here, I'm going to give him, he's a newer member of the community. I'm going to give him like a 20-second shout out so he can talk about his business really quick, which is based out of Mexico. And then we're going to come back, and Randy and David, I'm going to ask for you guys to give kind of like some kind of thought-provoking, mind-blowing kind of like insight to leave us with before we wrap up for the day. Let's let Daniel step onto the stage for just a second. And what we'll do is, Daniel, tell us about your business really quick, since you're also in Mexico and you had actually posted something in the channel as well. And just to give a little bit more exposure, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up with Randy and David.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Daniel. I run a company called Koym Technology in Mexico, and now we're in the process of setting up in Austin. It's taking a bit longer than I expected, but anyways, we do mainly two things. We provide software services. That is, we provide consultants that work in the nearshore model. So we have about 50 engineers in Mexico, like about half of them in Merida, which is where our base of operations is, and the rest is scattered across the country. And these are all engineers that are working for our customers. They integrate to our customers' development teams and staffing models, the remote staffing model. And then we also take on full software projects. So where we put in a dedicated team and we go from requirements gathering all the way to development, implementation, QA, and all the good things, right? So that's what we do. I've been on this industry the company's been running for more than 10 years, and I've been on software for more than 20. And that's so that's us, and we're happy to help. And I'm really interested in connecting in the Austin community. I like Austin very much. I'm going to be there actually around the 27th of May, I think, and hopefully I'll be moving there sometime soon. So anyways, that's us. And anything I can help with in connections, work, whatever, I'm happy to engage.
That's perfect. Well, thanks for joining us and being a part of the community and stuff like that. If anyone wants to get a hold of Randy, David, or Daniel, part of the way to do it is make sure you come into the community site where we actually have the posting of this Venture Outfitter Weekly. Every week, we Jello posts this information there, and there will be contact information for each one of them, so you can actually follow up. Thanks, Daniel. So let's do this. Let's go back to David. We'll get you to do like some wrap statements real quick, just to kind of wrap up any kind of thoughts, and then we'll go back to Randy.
So just changing the subject a little bit, just want to mention and still continue to talk about Mexico and the opportunities here, specifically for healthcare. There's a huge opportunity right now because of how the current administration has been dealing with public healthcare, where public healthcare, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my English, coverage has been diminished. So people that usually went to public healthcare services are migrating to private healthcare services. So there's a huge opportunity there to address, and I think one of the most important things that we need to address is how to put money in the money of the patients. I don't know if I'm explaining this analogy. How can we offer financial services for these people that we could, and bear with me with this expression, try to socialize private healthcare in terms of making it more accessible. That's what I'm trying to say, to make it more accessible for these people that are migrating from the public sector to the private sector. There's a huge migration there, and that is creating a huge opportunity also for new solutions.
That's beautiful. Well, especially given that one of the other underlying interesting things about both David and Randy's ventures, especially given that they're, they have one foot on both sides of the border, is you're both in healthcare. And I want to make sure I do a shout out to anyone that wants to follow up about that. That's, on the community, there is a health tech channel that hasn't had a lot of interaction on it recently. I know that we used to have a lot more on the Slack, and we moved off of Slack just recently, or in the last few months. I want to make sure that anyone that's wanting to follow up and explore that with David or Randy, one of the other great places to do it is on that channel. And to gain access to that, we do want you to be an entrepreneur. We want you to play by the rules being just, not to spam it with lots of different things about your, not to market to it, but to actually build. And it would be great to see a little bit more of a follow-up on that conversation there. Thank you, David, I always appreciate that ever since you were involved in the Innovation Bridge that was sponsored by the federal government of Mexico in 2018, 2019, that you're still involved long-term in the community. It proves the point that the investments that were made by the federal government back in that time frame really paid off, because I believe that the thing that Randy's been talking about this whole time about building greater closeness between us is a really important long-term goal, especially as the economy downturns.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Always my pleasure to participate.
Yeah, perfect. Well, so we'll go back to Randy. Randy, it's always fun to interact with you and always hear about what you're thinking about. What's your final words before we wrap up for the day?
Well, first, just say thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to chat with you. Let's do more of that. Always enjoy the conversation.
Likewise.
I think, the two summaries would be that those of us that live in Austin should be thinking about this coming year and 2-year period. It's going to be an opportunity as well as a challenge. And regarding the conversation about Mexico, I would say that ignore everything you've ever heard. It's an entirely different place than what you've been told.
I get it.
It's an incredible country with an incredible opportunity for business people who want to go build something.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. In my experience of the last 30 years of doing business there, I totally agree with you. Well, Randy, thank you for you for joining us today, and let's definitely I would like to actually have a get together with everyone that's doing something in the health tech space, because we haven't done a recent review about the technologies and what you guys are seeing and stuff like that. We'll definitely make it a point to having that happen sometime soon and have more in-depth conversations around that, because obviously health, there is nothing without health. So I appreciate what you and David and
20% of the economy, baby.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, cool. Well, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and wrap up. If you're wanting to get a hold of Randy or David or Dan or any of the other members of that were in the studio audience, or just more generally in the TechRanch community, like I said, as we've done this move over from Slack, we're wanting to rebuild the momentum. We got rid of Slack only because Slack was getting expensive for some of the longer term features, and it doesn't have any of the integrations that our new community software has. So I appreciate y'all's patience as we boot that back up. And I end up thinking it's going to be stronger for everyone longer term. What we'll do, though, is I want to go ahead and wrap up by just reminding you, if you want to get involved in the TechRanch, whether it's getting involved in the context of being one of our mentors, and you heard about me talk about the mentorship and what we think of mentorship earlier today, you can go to techranch.com/connect. There's a mentor forum there. If you're interested in connecting this type of work into your corner of the world, wherever that might be, one of the things to do is to go sign up as a country manager for the country that you might be interested in, or region. Obviously, in the context of Mexico, we've got activities happening in multiple states, multiple cities. I personally have spoken to different groups in 26 different cities across Mexico. I'm bullish on Mexico, just like Randy said earlier as well. So, the main thing back to the country manager process is we're not looking for just one person, and it is a volunteer position but then can actually turn into activities that drive business back and forth. And then the third thing is there is a place to sign up for the community at techranch.com/connect as well. But we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for sticking with us as we went a little bit long today. It's always my honor to be a part of a group, a community of entrepreneurs that are driven by vision and values. Let's go change the world for the better together. Y'all take good care, and we'll see you again soon. Hope to see you online on the community. Take care.